Some words only take a second to speak, but they can echo through the rest of your life. I didn't know why her voice clung to me that day. All I remember is that the moment she spoke, my entire world seemed to stop. Outside the glass storefront, snow was falling, softly blanketing Fifth Avenue in delicate white. Christmas lights shimmered in the windows of Carter's Toys, reflecting off the glass like fragments of a dream. Plush bears and porcelain dolls sat perfectly arranged in the display, staring back at passers-by with their painted smiles. I stood just behind the glass, watching the crowd. Parents tugged children along in heavy coats, their laughter carried on the wind. Somewhere inside, an employee adjusted a row of music boxes as another unboxed boughs of artificial pine. This was my store, my name etched in gold lettering above the entrance. And yet, I felt so far removed from all of it. The holiday charity event was in full swing, a PR initiative planned months in advance. Give back to the community, they'd said. Let the brand feel human. Rows of imported toys lined the tables, each more dazzling than the last. I was here because I had to be, not because I wanted to. There was a time when I adored Christmas. I loved the glow of string lights, the smell of cinnamon, the carols that drifted from shop fronts. But somewhere along the way, that love slipped from my fingers. 4 winters ago, I lost a piece of myself I could never reclaim. A tiny heartbeat I had felt beneath my hand, gone in the span of one cold December night. Since then, the holidays had felt less like warmth and more like a wound I kept covered. A young assistant approached her clipboard in hand. "Ms. Carter, we're ready for you to hand out the first gifts," she said brightly. I nodded, fixing the polite smile I'd practiced countless times. Outside, a line of children snaked around the corner, their cheeks flushed red from the cold, wide eyes, shining with anticipation. I thought to myself, just stand here, hand out a few toys, smile enough to make the photographers happy, then go back to your apartment and your quiet life. I don't think I'm a bad person. I sign checks for children's charities. I attend galas. I let my staff call this giving back. But as I stood there surrounded by glittering lights and the scent of pine, all I felt was the heavy silence of my own chest. And I didn't know then that in just a few minutes, a little girl with scuffed sneakers and a shy smile would walk up to me. And her words would cut deeper than any winter wind ever could. The line of children moved forward one by one, their tiny hands reaching for the bright packages stacked neatly on the table. Each face lit up as they clutched their prizes. Plastic robots, stuffed animals, dolls that spoke in soft, pre-recorded voices. I kept my smile steady as I handed out toy after toy, nodding to grateful parents and murmuring the occasional Merry Christmas. Then she appeared. A little girl no older than 5 or 6 stood at the end of the line. Her coat was too thin for the cold, its zipper stuck halfway up. Her sneakers were scuffed, one lace frayed and knotted clumsily. Blonde hair peeked out from under a faded knit hat, framing a face with wide brown eyes that seemed older than her years. When she stepped forward, I knelt down instinctively, lowering myself to her level. "Hi there," I said softly, offering my best practiced warmth. "What's your name, Lily?" she whispered, almost too quiet to hear. "Hi, Lily. That's a beautiful name." I glanced at the toys on display, searching for something she might like. My hand closed around a porcelain doll in a red velvet dress, one of our most expensive imports. It even had a music box built in. "Would you like this one?" I asked, holding it out to her. Lily stared at the doll for a long moment. Her little fingers twitched, as if she wanted to reach for it. But then she shook her head slowly. "No, thank you," she said. I blinked, surprised. No child had turned down a toy today, not even the simplest ones. "You don't want the doll?" I asked gently. She lifted her gaze to mine, and there was something in her eyes I couldn't name. Not sadness exactly, but a kind of quiet longing. Her voice was clear this time, small, but steady. "Ma'am, I don't want toys. I want a mom." The words landed like a stone dropped into a still pond. For a moment the world around us fell silent. The rustle of wrapping paper, the chatter of other children, even the faint hum of Christmas music, all of it seemed to vanish. I froze, my hand still outstretched, the doll growing heavier with every passing second. Lily wasn't crying. She wasn't throwing a tantrum or begging for sympathy. She was simply honest. Something inside my chest twisted painfully. In an instant, I was back in that hospital room 4 winters ago. The cold, fluorescent lights overhead, the sterile scent of antiseptic, the silence that followed the doctor's words. "I'm sorry." There's no heartbeat. I had clutched my abdomen, sobbing into a pillow, as the dreams I'd built tiny shoes, bedtime stories, first Christmas mornings crumbled to dust. Now staring at this little girl, I felt the weight of that loss pressing down all over again. A woman stepped forward, Lily's father, I assumed. He looked exhausted worry, etched deep into his features. "Lily," he said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Say thank you to the lady." But Daddy Lily replied softly, her voice trembling. "I already have toys. I just want someone who stays." The man's eyes darted to me, embarrassed. "I'm sorry," he muttered, but I shook my head quickly. "Don't be." My voice sounded foreign in my own ears, tight, strained. I crouched lower, meeting Lily's gaze again. I'm sure you're a very brave girl," I whispered, "and I hope you get what you're wishing for." She nodded once solemnly. As they turned to leave, I found myself gripping the porcelain doll so tightly. My knuckles ached. I left the store earlier than planned. The staff was still handing out toys, their voices cheerful as they guided children to the tables. Somewhere behind me, a speaker played Silent Night on repeat. But to me it sounded hollow, like the echo of a memory I couldn't quite touch. As I stepped outside, the December air hit me like a wave. Cold, sharp, cleansing almost. Snowflakes drifted lazily under the streetlights, melting as they kissed my coat. I pulled the collar tighter and started walking, though I wasn't sure where I meant to go. "Ma'am, I don't want toys. I want a mom." The words replayed in my mind over and over, looping like a broken record. I tried to shake it off. "She's just a child," I whispered to myself. "She doesn't know what she's saying." But deep down, I knew better. There had been no drama in her voice, no theatrics, just a small, steady truth that pierced deeper than any plea for pity could have. I didn't realize my hands were trembling until I fumbled with my apartment keys. The moment I stepped into my living room, I was swallowed by stillness. The heat from the radiator hummed softly. My Christmas tree sat in the corner, perfectly decorated, perfectly symmetrical, perfectly untouched. I kicked off my boots and sank into the leather couch. For years I told myself I was content with this quiet life, no messes to clean up, no tiny voices calling my name in the middle of the night. just order. Peace. But tonight peace felt like loneliness, dressed up in gold and glass. I leaned forward, resting my head in my hands. I already have toys. I just want someone who stays. Her words echoed again, louder this time. I thought of the hospital room, the smell of disinfectant, the emptiness of my arms after the nurse took the swaddled bundle away. The child I never got to hold. I thought I had buried that pain, that I had sealed it away like an old letter at the bottom of a locked drawer. But Lily's voice had cracked the drawer open. And now, in the stillness of my apartment, all I could hear was her. Some meetings aren't planned. Some roads you take without knowing why, as if your heart has already chosen the direction long before your feet do. The next morning I told myself I needed fresh air. That was the excuse anyway. The truth, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I wrapped a scarf around my neck and wandered through streets I hadn't walked in years. Lower, narrower streets where tourists never lingered. The buildings here were old and tired brick facades streaked with time. Laundry lines sagged between fire escapes. The smell of bread from a corner bakery mixed with the faint tang of car exhaust. And then I saw her. Lily. She was sitting on the edge of a cracked sidewalk, her knees drawn up her little hands, clutching a flattened cardboard box. She giggled softly to herself as she folded the flaps and pretending it was a castle. A stick became her flagpole, a bottle cap, a crown for her cardboard queen. For a moment, I just stood there frozen watching her in her small imagined kingdom. She didn't notice me. A few feet away, her father was unloading crates from a delivery van. Ryan. His name came to me later. His shoulders hunched against the cold, his jacket too thin, his hair falling into his eyes as he worked quickly to stack boxes near a shop door. I could have walked away right then, slipped back into the comfort of my insulated world, but I didn't. My feet stayed planted on that uneven sidewalk, my hands buried in my coat pockets. Why am I here? I asked myself. The night before, I had tossed and turned for hours, replaying Lily's voice in my head. I didn't want toys. I wanted a mom. And now, here she was, a little girl who asked for nothing more than the one thing I had once dreamed of giving. My chest tightened as I watched her set the bottle cap gently atop her cardboard castle. She was smiling, but it wasn't the carefree smile of a child who has everything she needs. It was smaller, braver, as if she'd already learned that in this life, you sometimes have to build your own castle out of scraps. I don't remember deciding to move closer. One moment, I was standing still, watching her from across the street. The next, my boots were crunching against the frost-covered pavement. My hand slipped instinctively into my coat pocket, fingers brushing against the small wooden bird I had carved the night before. I didn't know why I'd made it. Maybe because her words wouldn't leave me. Maybe because some part of me needed to do something, anything. As I approached, I heard her humming softly, a tune I didn't recognize. She was pressing the bottle cap into place on her cardboard castle. "Hi," I said gently, my voice lower than usual. Lily's head shot up. Her brown eyes widened when she saw me. "Hi," she replied, uncertain but not afraid. I knelt down slowly so I wouldn't tower over her. The cold seeped through my tights as my knee touched the cracked concrete. I saw you at the toy store yesterday," I said. She nodded, her mittened hands tightening around the edge of her box. "I brought you something," I continued, pulling the little wooden bird from my pocket. "It's not fancy, but it's yours if you want it." Her eyes lit up in a way that made my chest ache. "You made this?" she asked. I nodded. "It's beautiful," she whispered, cupping it carefully in her small palms, as if it might break. Just then, I heard footsteps behind me. Lily. A man's voice, steady, but laced with wariness. I turned and saw him standing a few feet away, a crate still balanced on his shoulder. Ryan. His gaze flicked from me to Lily, then to the wooden bird in her hands. He set the crate down and stepped closer, his expression guarded. "Is everything okay here?" he asked, his tone polite but firm. "Yes," I said quickly, rising to my feet. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude. I just wanted to give her something." His eyes softened slightly, but only slightly. "She doesn't usually take things from strangers," he said. "I'm not—" I stopped myself. "You are a stranger," I thought. "She met me yesterday at my store," I said instead. "Carter's Toys." Recognition flickered across his face. "Oh, right. The event." He looked down at Lily. "Sweetheart, did you say thank you?" "Thank you," Lily murmured, hugging the bird close to her chest. "You're welcome," I said softly. Ryan exhaled, his posture easing a little. "Look, I appreciate the gesture," he said, "but you don't have to." "I know," I interrupted gently. "I wanted to." We stood there in the cold for a moment, the three of us bound by nothing but an awkward silence, and the faint hum of Lily's earlier tune still hanging in the air. Then I stepped back. "I should go," I said. Ryan gave a curt nod. "Take care. You too." But as I turned and walked away, I couldn't help glancing back. Lily was still staring at the wooden bird, turning it over in her hands, as if it were the most precious thing in the world. The sound of my boots echoed faintly against the marble floor as I stepped into my apartment. It felt warmer than the street outside, but not by much. The radiator hummed faintly in the corner, and somewhere in the distance, the muted rumble of city traffic filtered through double-paned windows. I set my coat on the back of a chair and stood there for a long moment, staring at the neatly decorated space around me. Everything in this apartment was perfect, pristine, ordered, and yet it felt as hollow as ever. My mind replayed the moment Lily's fingers curled around the wooden bird, the way her small face lit up fragile, but radiant. I thought of Ryan's eyes, too, wary, tired but not unkind. I didn't belong there. Why did I go? I wasn't her mother. I wasn't even a friend. I was just someone who carved a toy in the middle of the night because she couldn't silence a little girl's voice in her head. I walked to the kitchen, filled a glass with water, and took a long sip. "This isn't your life, Elena. She's not your responsibility." But another voice whispered back, "And yet you went." I set the glass down with a soft clink. No, I couldn't do this. I couldn't let myself get pulled in. That child didn't need someone like me, someone who still carried her own grief like a shadow, someone who hadn't been able to hold onto her own baby, let alone care for another. I leaned against the counter, gripping the edge until my knuckles ached. "Mother's stay," I murmured under my breath. And for years, I hadn't been able to stay, not even for my own child. What good could I do for Lily Nunn? And yet, I couldn't shake the image of her sitting there on the cracked sidewalk building castles out of scraps. We tell ourselves we're just passing by, just walking, just moving through the world like we always do. But sometimes, it's not our feet that choose the path. It's our heart. The days after I saw her on that cracked sidewalk felt heavier than I expected. Every morning I told myself I'd go for a walk, clear my mind, stretch my legs, maybe stop for a coffee, but my steps kept pulling me in one direction, toward her. The first time it was the park. I sat on a bench with a latte in hand, pretending to scroll through emails. But my eyes kept drifting to the little figure by the swings, Lily, her blonde hair bouncing as she pushed herself higher, her laugh ringing out like a bell. Ryan stood nearby, hands shoved in his pockets, watching her with a quiet intensity. I could have left, should have left, but I didn't. The second time, it was a tiny cafe on the corner. I walked in for tea and froze when I spotted them at a table near the window. Lily was coloring in a crumpled notebook, her tongue poking out slightly as she focused. Ryan sipped coffee-tired eyes, softening each time he glanced at her. I sat 2 tables away, telling myself it was coincidence. It didn't feel like one. The third time I ran into them at the neighborhood grocery store, Ryan was balancing a small basket in one hand, Lily clutching his coat with the other. She reached for an apple from a display, holding it up like it was treasure. "That one's perfect, Daddy," she said. He smiled faintly. I stepped behind a shelf before they saw me heart-pounding for reasons I couldn't explain. Why am I doing this? I asked myself later. This wasn't my world. Not my story, and yet every time I saw her, her laughter, her small hands, her cardboard castles, I felt something stir inside me, something I thought had died years ago. It was the park bench again. This time I didn't pretend I was there for the fresh air. Lily spotted me before I could decide whether to stay or leave. Her face lit up. "Hi," she chirped, skipping toward me. I froze, caught between the instinct to wave and the urge to disappear. "Hi, Lily," I said softly, my voice surprising even me. She stopped in front of me, holding something behind her back. "Guess what I have?" she asked, grinning. "What?" "A secret," she whispered, then giggled as if she'd just revealed it anyway. I smiled genuinely before I could stop myself. Ryan appeared moments later, a paper cup in his hand. He looked startled to see me, but didn't say anything right away. "Ms. Carter," he said finally. "Elena's fine," I replied. He nodded, his expression guarded but not unkind. Lily plopped down on the bench beside me, swinging her legs. "Do you have a mommy?" she asked suddenly. The question hit harder than I expected. Did I said carefully. "She passed away a long time ago." "Oh," Lily said, looking thoughtful. "Do you have a daddy?" I smiled faintly. "Yes. He lives far away." She tilted her head. "Do you have kids?" I hesitated, a lump forming in my throat. "No," I said softly. "I don't." Her brow furrowed as if trying to solve a puzzle. "You'd be a good mommy," she declared. Ryan, sitting down on the other side of her, let out a quiet sigh. "Lily," he said gently. "It's okay, I told him." For a moment, none of us spoke. The wind rustled through the bare branches above us. "She doesn't remember her mom," Ryan said quietly after a pause. "She left when Lily was still in diapers." His voice was calm, but there was a weight behind it. "She ran off with someone else. I haven't seen her since." I glanced at him but said nothing. There was no anger in his tone, only a tired acceptance. Lily hummed a tune under her breath, oblivious to the heaviness between us. I looked at her small hands gripping the edge of the bench, and for a fleeting moment I imagined her holding mine. It was dangerous letting thoughts like that in, so I pushed them away. That night, the apartment felt colder than usual. I set my bag on the counter, kicked off my shoes, and stood there in the dim light for what felt like hours. The clock ticked softly on the wall, each second stretching longer than the last. I couldn't stop thinking about her Lily, with her bright eyes and her curious questions. "You'd be a good mommy." I let out a shaky breath. Walking to the corner of the bedroom, I knelt down and reached for the bottom drawer of the wardrobe. It stuck at first, as if it too was resisting what I was about to do. But with a gentle tug, it slid open. There it was. A small cardboard box, edges frayed from years of being moved but never opened. I placed it on the floor and lifted the lid. Inside lay a tiny, pristine dress, still folded tags, still dangling. Next to it, a pair of knitted booties, soft and white. And at the bottom, wrapped in tissue paper, a porcelain doll with a painted smile. I had bought her years ago in a moment of pure joy, when I thought my life was about to change forever. I thought I'd be a mother. I thought I'd hold a little hand, soothe little cries, read bedtime stories under soft lamplight. But that dream had ended in a sterile hospital room under the glare of fluorescent lights. And I'd sealed this box as if closing the door on that chapter would make the pain stay inside. Now staring at the doll's glassy eyes, the weight of it all came rushing back. The hospital, the silence, the nurse's gentle hands as she took my baby away. I pressed a hand to my mouth, but the sob broke through anyway. Hot tears spilled down my cheeks, blurring the doll's face into nothing more than a swirl of color. For years, I hadn't let myself cry, but tonight, I couldn't stop. Sometimes a single step feels heavier than 1,000 miles, especially when it's the one that leads you closer to a place your heart both longs for and fears. The next day, I found myself at the bakery on the corner, ordering a small bag of cinnamon cookies and 2 cups of hot cocoa. I told myself it was just for me, but I knew better. By the time I reached the park, Lily and Ryan were already there. She was sprawled on the grass with a box of crayons, her tongue poking out slightly, as she focused on a wrinkled piece of paper. Ryan stood nearby, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes scanning the playground like a hawk. I hesitated for a moment, gripping the paper bag tighter. Then Lily spotted me. "Miss Elena," she squealed, jumping to her feet. I smiled despite the lump rising in my throat. "Hi, Lily," I said softly, walking over. Her eyes widened as I handed her the bag. "These are for you," I said, "and for your dad, too." "Cookies," she gasped, peeking inside. "And cocoa," I added. Ryan gave me a small nod, guarded but polite. "Thank you," he said quietly. "It's nothing," I replied. Lily tugged at my sleeve. "Want to see my drawing?" "Of course." I knelt beside her as she held up the paper. It was a rough sketch of a castle, with crooked towers, and a stick figure girl waving from the window. "That's beautiful," I said. "Is that you in the window?" She nodded. "Do you want to add flowers around the castle?" I asked. Her face lit up. "Can you show me how?" And so we sat there together, huddled over a crumpled sheet of paper. I showed her how to draw tulips and daisies, with simple loops and lines. Her small fingers gripped the crayon tightly, tongue between her teeth in concentration. Every now and then I glanced at Ryan. He watched us silently, his expression unreadable. But he didn't stop me. For a moment, I let myself believe this was normal. A park, a father, a child, and me, just someone teaching flowers to a little girl who deserved a whole garden. After we finished the drawing, Lily ran off to the swings, her laughter floating on the crisp afternoon air. I stayed on the bench, my hands wrapped around the cooling cup of cocoa. Ryan remained standing nearby, arms crossed loosely, his gaze following his daughter. "Thank you for the cookies," he said after a long pause. "You're welcome," I replied softly. Another silence settled between us. Then he spoke again, his tone calm, but edged with something I couldn't quite name. "You don't have to do this." I looked up at him. "Do what?" This he said, gesturing faintly toward the swings. "The cookies, the drawing lessons, spending time with her." I hesitated, unsure how to respond. "She likes you," he added, his voice quieter now. "But Lily, she's been let down before, and I don't want her to get attached to someone who isn't planning to stay." His words hit harder than I expected. "I understand," I said slowly. "But I'm not here out of pity. I just like being around her." Ryan studied me for a moment, his dark eyes searching mine. "Why?" he asked simply. I took a deep breath. "Because she reminds me of someone. Because I can't stop thinking about her voice that day in the store. Because part of me wants to give her what I never got to give my own child." But all I said was I lost a baby. A few years ago. His expression softened slightly, though he didn't speak. "She never made it past the second trimester." I continued, my voice quiet, almost trembling. "I bought a doll for her, a tiny dress. I thought I'd finally have the family I always wanted." I let out a small, bitter laugh. "Instead, I came home from the hospital with empty arms and a box I couldn't bear to open." Ryan didn't say anything, but the air shifted between us. He sat down on the far end of the bench, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "Don't be," I murmured. We both sat there staring at the playground where Lily's laughter rang out like bells. "She deserves more than I can give her," Ryan said quietly. "But I'm all she has." I nodded. "She deserves the world," I whispered. And for a fleeting moment, I wondered if I had the courage to be part of hers. The sun dipped lower in the sky, brushing the park in soft golden light. Lily returned from the swings. Her cheeks flushed her tiny boots, scuffing against the path. "Miss Elena," she said, climbing onto the bench beside me. "Yes, sweetheart," I asked gently. She fidgeted with the sleeve of her coat for a moment, as if summoning courage. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." Her brown eyes met mine, so open, so unguarded. "If I don't have a mom," she began softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "can you be mine?" The words hung in the air, delicate and heavy all at once. I felt my breath catch. For a moment the world around us seemed to still, the laughter from the playground, the rustling of leaves, even the faint honk of traffic in the distance. I wanted to say something, anything, but no words came. I looked at her small hand resting on the bench, fingers curled slightly, waiting. My own hand moved before my mind could catch up. I reached out and gently took hers, giving it a soft squeeze. She smiled a shy, hopeful smile that made something in my chest ache. But I didn't speak, because I couldn't. Because the truth was, I didn't know how to answer. Could I be her mom? Could I carry the weight of someone else's heart, fragile and trusting? Could I stay Ryan's voice cut through my thoughts? "Lily, it's getting late," he called from a few feet away. She glanced over her shoulder. "Coming, Daddy." Then she looked back at me. "Promise you'll come to the park again." I hesitated, then nodded. "I'll try," I said softly. Her smile widened as she hopped off the bench and ran to her father. her wooden bird still clutched tightly in her hand. I watched them walk away their shadows, stretching long in the fading light. And for the first time in years, I felt the walls around my heart begin to crack. You never realize how much you care until you're standing at someone's door at midnight, praying they'll be okay. The call came just past 11. I was curled up on the couch, a book open in my lap but unread for the last hour. My phone buzzed, and when I saw Ryan's name on the screen, my chest tightened. "Hello." His voice was low, strained. "Lily's running a fever," he said. "It's high." "I don't." He exhaled sharply. "I don't know what else to do. I didn't hesitate. I'm on my way." Minutes later, I was in a cab clutching a small bag with medicine and a damp washcloth. The city blurred past the window streetlights, glowing like distant stars. When I arrived, Ryan opened the door before I even knocked. "Thank you," he said, his voice heavy with worry. I stepped inside. The apartment was small, dimly lit. Lily lay on the couch, her cheeks flushed, her tiny body curled under a threadbare blanket. "Hi, sweetheart," I whispered, kneeling beside her. She stirred slightly, her eyelids fluttering open. "Miss Elena," she murmured, her voice hoarse. "I'm here," I said softly, brushing damp strands of hair from her forehead. "You're okay now." I pressed the cool cloth against her skin, feeling the heat radiate through it. Ryan hovered nearby, running a hand through his hair. "She wouldn't stop crying," he said quietly. Then she just went quiet. I got scared. "You did the right thing calling me," I replied. For the next hour, I sat by Lily's side, swapping the cloth as it warmed, coaxing her to sip water, humming softly when she whimpered. Her small hand found mine at some point, gripping tightly. "Don't go," she whispered. "I won't," I said, my voice breaking. When her breathing finally steadied and her fever began to drop, I leaned back, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Ryan stood in the doorway, watching silently. "She's never let anyone stay with her when she's sick," he said after a moment. I didn't know what to say to that. So I just kept holding her hand, and in that quiet room, I began to understand something I hadn't before. This wasn't pity. It wasn't obligation. It was love. Ryan brought me a glass of water but said nothing as I sat on the edge of the couch, stroking Lily's damp hair. The apartment was quiet now. The only sound was Lily's soft, shallow breaths as her fever finally began to break. Ryan leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed loosely. I could feel his eyes on me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "She's calmer now," I said softly, glancing at him. He nodded, his expression unreadable. "You're good with her," he said after a pause. "Like you've done this before." I looked down at Lily. Her tiny fingers still curled around mine, even in sleep. "I haven't," I admitted, "but I always thought I would." Ryan's brow furrowed slightly, but he didn't press. "Thank you for coming," he said instead. "You didn't have to call me," I replied. "Yes, I did," he said quietly. "You're the only person she's asked for in days." Something in his voice made me look up. His eyes weren't guarded this time. They were softer, warmer, and that scared me more than any walls he might have built, because I could feel my own walls beginning to crumble. I brushed my thumb gently over Lily's small knuckles, her skin warm but no longer burning. "I shouldn't be here," I whispered almost to myself. Ryan tilted his head slightly. "Why not?" "Because I'm not her mother," I said. "I'm just a woman who stepped in one day with cookies and crayons. Someone who carved her a wooden bird and thought that made her special. I swallowed hard. She deserves someone better. Someone who knows how to stay. Ryan's voice was quiet, but steady. Maybe she just needs someone who cares. His words sat heavy between us. I wanted to believe them. But deep down, fear coiled tight in my chest. I wanted to stay. God, I wanted to stay. But what if I failed her the way I failed my own child? What if I couldn't be enough? The clock on the wall ticked softly, its hands crawling toward dawn. But I didn't move. I stayed in that worn-out armchair, my hands folded in my lap, my eyes fixed on the small figure curled up on the couch. Lily's fever had broken hours ago. Her cheeks were no longer flushed, her breath slow and even. She looked peaceful now, safe. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to leave. I had told Ryan I'd keep watch while he slept in the next room. But the truth was, even if he'd offered to take over, I don't think I could have let go. Somewhere deep down, I didn't want to. I leaned forward, brushing a stray curl from Lily's forehead. She stirred slightly, but didn't wake. A lump rose in my throat as I watched her tiny chest rise and fall beneath the faded blanket. How could such a small person carry so much of my heart already? Tears blurred my vision before I even realized they were there. I pressed the heel of my hand to my eyes, trying to will them away. But they came anyway, hot, silent, unstoppable. I didn't know if I was crying for her or for the child I never got to hold. Maybe both. I'm not strong enough for this, I whispered into the dark, and yet my heart answered back. But you want to be. There's something fragile about stepping into someone else's home for the first time. Like you're walking on glass floors, afraid of breaking what little trust is holding you up. Ryan invited me to dinner 3 nights later. It wasn't formal. No fancy tablecloths or polished silverware. Just him, Lily, and 2 mismatched chairs pulled up to a small wooden table in their kitchen. Still, my heart thudded as I stood at their door clutching a paper bag with a pie I'd bought on the way. When Ryan opened the door, he gave me a small, almost shy smile. "Come in," he said. Lily bounded forward before I could answer, grabbing my hand. "Miss Elena—" "You came," she squealed. "Of course I did," I said softly, squeezing her fingers. The kitchen smelled of garlic and rosemary. A pot simmered on the stove. Ryan moved about quietly, ladling soup into chipped bowls. "Sorry, it's nothing fancy," he said, his voice low. "It's perfect," I replied. We sat down together, the 3 of us. Lily chattered about her day, about a caterpillar she'd found in the park, about a drawing she wanted to show me later. I listened, nodding, smiling, but a part of me couldn't stop noticing how normal this felt. Like I'd stumbled into a life I wasn't sure I deserved. Ryan spoke little, but every now and then I caught him watching me. Not with suspicion anymore, with something warmer. Something that made my chest tighten. The soup was simple, just potatoes and carrots in a light broth. But as I took the first spoonful, a strange thought flickered in my mind. This tastes like home. And I wasn't sure if that comforted me or scared me. After dinner, Lily curled up on the couch with her sketchbook humming softly as she drew. Ryan and I lingered at the table, empty bowls between us, the faint smell of rosemary still hanging in the air. For a while, neither of us spoke. I traced the rim of my glass with my finger, feeling the weight of words I couldn't quite shape. "She likes you," Ryan said finally. I looked up. "She trusts you." He added, his voice quiet but steady. "She's easy to love," I replied. His lips curved faintly, Not quite a smile, more like a sigh turned outward. Then his expression shifted, growing heavier. "It's not her I'm worried about," he said. I frowned. "What do you mean?" Ryan leaned back slightly, folding his arms across his chest. "I'm not afraid of you becoming part of her life," he said. "I'm afraid of you leaving it." The words hit me like a stone to the chest. "I've seen what happens when people walk away," he continued, his voice tight. "It breaks her. It breaks me too, if I'm honest. And I can't let that happen again." My breath caught. "Ryan." He shook his head. "I'm not asking for promises. I know you have your own life, your own world. But if you're going to step into hers even a little, please don't do it unless you mean to stay." I stared at him, my heart thudding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. "I'm afraid too," I whispered. His brow furrowed. "I'm afraid I'm not enough," I said. "Afraid I'll fail her. Afraid I'll fail you. Afraid of caring too much and losing everything all over again." Ryan's expression softened. "I don't need perfect," he said quietly. "I just need real." My fingers tightened around the glass. For years I had built walls around my heart so high, even I couldn't see over them. But in that dim kitchen with his tired eyes on mine, and his daughter's laughter faintly in the background, I felt the first crack in those walls. And for the first time, I let it stay. The email came late the next morning. "Congratulations," it began. "You've been selected to lead our Boston expansion. A 2-year post. Full relocation covered." I stared at the words, my thumb hovering over the screen, heart pounding. This was the kind of opportunity people fought for. A chance to prove myself on a bigger stage, to solidify the career I'd spent years building. And yet, my chest felt heavy. 2 years. A different city. A different life. My mind flashed back to last night. Ryan's steady gaze. Lily's hand gripping mine as I tucked her under the blanket. Her words came back to me soft, but unshakable. "If I don't have a mom, can you be mine?" I set the phone down and pressed my palms to my face. This wasn't supposed to happen. I wasn't supposed to get attached. I wasn't supposed to stay long enough for choices like this to hurt. And yet, here I was. Could I really walk away now? From the girl who made me believe I could still love. From the man whose quiet strength had started to feel like home. The old me, the one who buried her grief under endless work, would have accepted the offer without hesitation. But the woman sitting here now wasn't so sure anymore. I used to think family had to look a certain way. Picture-perfect smiles, tidy houses, no cracks in the glass. But maybe family is just the people who feel like home, even when nothing else does. I turned down the Boston offer. For the first time in years, I chose something other than my career. I chose to stay. It wasn't a dramatic decision. No tearful speeches or grand declarations. Just a quiet knowing in my chest that I couldn't walk away from this. Not from Lily. Not from Ryan. Not from the version of myself I'd found in their small, imperfect world. The days after felt different. I woke up early to join them for breakfast. Instant oatmeal toast, slightly burned at the edges. Lily's laughter ringing out as she tried to pour her own milk. We went for long walks in the park. Lily skipped ahead, clutching my hand, pointing out every bird, every caterpillar, every secret fairy tree she discovered. In the afternoons, we sat at the kitchen table. I taught her how to roll cookie dough between her palms. her small hands sticky with flour, as she grinned up at me. Ryan watched from the doorway, a faint smile tugging at his lips. It wasn't perfect. The apartment was too small, the bills too high. There were moments when Lily threw a tantrum, when Ryan's patience frayed, when I doubted whether I belonged in their lives at all. But then, there were quiet nights. Lily curled up between us on the couch, her head in my lap, Ryan's arm resting lightly behind my shoulders. And in those moments, I didn't care about perfection. I cared about this messy, real, fragile thing we were building together. A family. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. We were in the kitchen flour, dusting the countertops like fresh snow. Lily was standing on a chair beside me, her little hands clumsy as she tried to crack an egg into the mixing bowl. "Careful, sweetheart," I said, steadying her wrists. The yolk split perfectly this time. She beamed, proud of herself. Ryan leaned against the doorframe, his arms folded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "You two make a good team," he said softly. I glanced at him, my chest warming at the sight. It didn't feel strange anymore being here baking cookies in this small, cluttered kitchen. It felt right. When the last tray went into the oven, Lily hopped down from the chair and ran to the living room. "Where are you going?" I called after her. "Getting my crayons," she shouted back. Ryan chuckled, shaking his head. "She's been happier lately," he said. "Calmer." "I think that has a lot to do with you." I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, Lily came bounding back into the kitchen. "Look," she said, holding up a crayon drawing. It was a messy but colorful picture of 3 stick figures holding hands under a big sun. "That's me, Daddy, and—" She paused, her eyes darting shyly to me. "Mommy," she finished in a whisper. The word hung in the air, soft but heavy. I froze. Ryan's eyes flicked to mine, searching my face. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Mommy Lily said again, louder this time, her smile widening. "That's you." Something in my chest cracked open. A sound escaped my throat, half laugh, half sob, as tears filled my eyes. I knelt down, pulling her small body into my arms. "Oh, Lily," I whispered, my voice breaking. "You have no idea how much that means to me." Her little arms wrapped tight around my neck. "You're my mommy now," she murmured. And in that moment I realized I wasn't broken anymore. I wasn't a woman clutching an empty box in the dark. I was here, in a small, imperfect kitchen, with a man who saw me, and a child who chose me. I had found my way home. The sun was dipping low, casting a warm, golden glow over the park as we strolled along the winding path. Lily skipped ahead, her wooden bird clutched tight in her hand. She darted from tree to tree, pointing out squirrels and dandelions with wide-eyed wonder. Ryan walked beside me, hands in his jacket pockets. Every now and then, our shoulders brushed small, unintentional touches that felt like promises we hadn't yet spoken aloud. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. The silence was comfortable, like a soft blanket wrapped around the 3 of us. At one point, Lily spun around and came running back. "Hold my hands," she demanded, offering one to me and one to Ryan. We each took one, and she grinned as we lifted her into the air between us. Again she squealed. We laughed, real unguarded laughter that felt like it came from somewhere deep in my chest. For so long I thought I had lost this. I thought I had lost the part of me that could still belong to a family, still love, still trust. But here I was, not in some glass-walled apartment filled with trophies of a career I thought defined me. Here, on a cracked sidewalk with a little girl calling me Mommy, and a man whose quiet presence felt like home. I glanced at Ryan. He smiled, not the polite kind he gave strangers, but the real one, soft and unpolished. And I realized this was enough. It didn't have to be perfect. It just had to be real. For the first time in years, I thought as I squeezed Lily's small hand, I'm finally home. Sometimes the best gifts don't come wrapped in shiny paper or tied with ribbons. Sometimes they come in the form of people who stay. The apartment smelled of cinnamon and roasted chicken. Fairy lights twinkled along the windowsill, their soft glow reflecting in Lily's wide brown eyes as she sat cross-legged on the floor. "Can I open it now?" she asked, bouncing slightly. "Go ahead, sweetheart," I said with a smile. Her small fingers tore at the wrapping paper, eagerly revealing a wooden box. She opened it carefully, and her breath caught. Inside lay a doll, hand-carved from maple, with a simple painted face, and a tiny dress stitched from scraps of fabric. "You made her," Lily whispered, looking up at me. "I did," I replied softly. "She's one of a kind, just like you." She hugged the doll to her chest, her smile so bright it made my chest ache. "Thank you, Mommy," she murmured. Ryan's eyes met mine from across the room. There was no need for words. The three of us gathered around the small table for dinner. The food was simple, but the warmth in the room made it feel like a feast. Lily chattered between bites, telling stories about her drawings and how she wanted to teach her new doll to bake cookies just like we do. We laughed real, unguarded laughter that seemed to fill every corner of the room. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like an outsider peering in. I felt like I belonged. The fairy lights glimmered softly in the window, their colors reflecting on the glass, like tiny stars caught in a jar. Outside, snow began to fall, light quiet turning the street into a winter postcard. I sat on the couch, Lily nestled against my side, her new wooden doll tucked safely in her arms. Ryan sat on the other side, one arm draped across the back of the couch, his fingers brushing my shoulder lightly. For a long while, none of us spoke. The room didn't need words. It was warm, full of the soft sounds of breathing and the occasional creak of the old radiator. Then Lily stirred. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice small and careful. "Yes, sweetheart." She looked up at me, her brown eyes wide and shining in the dim light. "Will we always be together?" The question caught me off guard, not because I didn't know the answer, but because it carried a weight I felt deep in my chest. I glanced at Ryan. He met my eyes, giving me a small, almost imperceptible nod. I looked back at Lily and took her tiny hand in mine, squeezing it gently. "Yes, Lily," I said softly. "We're a family, and families stay." A smile spread across her face, quiet at first, then blooming into something bright enough to light the entire room. "Okay," she whispered, hugging her doll tighter and snuggling closer to me. I pressed a kiss to the top of her head, breathing in the faint scent of cinnamon from her hair. Ryan's hand slid into mine, his fingers warm and steady. For years I had been afraid to stay, afraid to love, afraid to let anyone close enough to see the cracks. But now, with Lily's hand in one of mine and Ryan's in the other, I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. I was home. The street was aglow with Christmas lights, red gold and silver strung across shop windows, casting soft halos on the snowy pavement. I walked between them, Ryan on my left, Lily on my right, our hands linked like we'd done it 1,000 times before. Lily swung our arms back and forth, her small boots crunching in the fresh snow. "Look, Mommy, that house has a reindeer on the roof," she squealed, pointing with mittened hands. I smiled. "Maybe it's waiting for Santa," I said softly. Ryan chuckled, his breath visible in the cold night air. The three of us strolled slowly. No rush, no destination. Just together, and as we walked under the glowing lights, something inside me settled. For years, I had been running from grief, from love, from the terrifying possibility of letting people in again. But here, with Lily's tiny hand gripping mine, and Ryan's warm presence at my side, I realized I didn't have to run anymore. Maybe family isn't something you find, I thought, as we passed a row of flickering lanterns. Maybe it's something that finds you when you're finally ready to stay. Lily's laughter rang out like bells as she tugged us forward. And in that moment, I knew whatever lay ahead, however imperfect the road, this was where I belonged. Home wasn't a place. It was two hands holding mine in the winter night,